Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
Today's film was another request by a loyal listener, Nick. Nick, thank you for 1986's Trick or Treat. The most ineptly titled movie. Well, maybe not the most ineptly titled movie, but it's pretty darn close. This movie has so little to do with Halloween. In fact, Halloween's like in there, but it's almost shoehorned in.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with Halloween, this movie. Or tricking or treating, really. Any variation thereof. What this movie is a heavy metal horror film, which is actually a fascinating subgenre to me, even though I haven't seen too many of them. They always hold such promise, because heavy metal and horror, they go so well together, and I love both of them so much. And then also, in order to see a heavy metal horror movie, you basically have to jump back to the 80s, which is, again, another era that I absolutely love. So the idea of diving into this 1986 heavy metal horror film was pretty exciting for me. I have to say, it started out pretty good, too, but was a little boring. Maybe I was just a little let down by the end. I don't know. How did you feel about it, Craig?
Oh, yeah, that's funny. I really felt the same way. Like, it was pretty good, and it had some promise, and then I felt like it kind of just fell apart in the third act. The third act was really just kind of goofy and stupid. I don't know. Overall, I mean, here we are jumping to our overall conclusions right here at the beginning, but it wasn't bad. I remember seeing this movie when I was a kid.
You did?
Yeah, I saw it. I remember seeing it on the video shelves, and maybe part of the reason I liked it was because the main kid and this guy, Mark Price, who plays Eddie in the movie, was on Family Ties.
Oh yeah, Skippy.
He was Skippy from Family Ties, and I loved that. Oh gosh, I loved that show. That was one of the shows that my family watched. We would sit down and watch that show together, and I remember that guy. And in that movie, or in that show, excuse me, he was kind of this nerdy, nice guy, and that carries over a little bit into this movie. But I think that may have been why I was initially interested in it. And I knew going in that I had seen it before, but I didn't remember anything about it. I think that another 15 years from now, I'll feel the same way. I saw it. I don't remember anything about it, but that's fine. I don't know. It's an interesting movie. We've done Trick or Treat as opposed to this one, Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat, the anthology film.
I was going to say, heaven's sakes, people don't confuse the two.
Yeah. Yeah, Trick or Treat is one of my favorite Halloween anthology movies, and this one doesn't live up to that standard, in my opinion. But I didn't think it was bad. It was a good effort, and it was it's an interesting concept. Just, you're right. I think in the third act, it kind of falls apart.
Yeah, and it starts off with great promise. And actually, I was really into it for the first, I don't know, probably half an hour, if not more. Again, you got some heavy metal music playing in the background. It's got this very 80s feel. The camera's sweeping through a kid's bedroom, which could be any kid's bedroom at this time. And he's clearly into heavy metal, and he's got like Anthrax posters and Iron Maiden albums, and we're in the record era.
Twisted
here.
Sister, right?
Yeah, it's cool, and I mean, I actually kind of related to that a little bit, and it pans down to this guy who's there's a little bit of voiceover as he is writing, and you realize that he is penning a little bit of a fan letter to one of his idols. And his idol is this big heavy metal singer named Sammy Kerr.
It's me again, Ragman. Well, the song remains the same. Total conflict. Them against us. I can't believe they canceled your Halloween concert. It's like you say. Rock's chosen warriors will rule the apocalypse. Airheads and brain deads are everywhere. Who needs them?
And actually, this confused me because the copy that Craig and I saw, or at least the copy that I saw, the title of the movie was listed as Ragman. Was it on your version?
I don't know if it was listed as Ragman, but Ragman popped up like a title.
Yeah,
like
the title card.
I noticed that too. So yeah. Yeah.
The movie must have originally been called Ragman. I actually didn't see evidence of that anywhere else, but Ragman came up as the title card. So I really feel like Trick or Treat was tacked on at the end to try to sell it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, like we said,
Sure.
it has very little to do with Halloween. It's not a Halloween movie. But, this kid is so totally relatable from the very beginning because he's a bit of an outcast, as you can tell. Maybe one of those kids, especially at this time period, who was teased a lot at school. Well, we get a whole litany of these instances where he's teased. It's almost like a montage of every 80s joke you can pull on somebody. Snapping his towel in the locker room,
right.
Getting his books knocked out of his hand and things like that. But he's writing to this musician, and he's kind of in this mindset where he's writing to him and he's saying, nobody understands me like you do. And, like, not in a creepy way, but just in a way that people this age tend to identify and idolize famous figures.
Yeah, sure.
And so I don't know, I could just kind of instantly, I really got a beat on this character, and I didn't think he was so cardboard cutout. I just thought that the fact that it's focusing on his interest in the music and his obsession with music as a teenager was just very realistic. And I really liked that about this movie. And the movie, for all of its faults, it really does keep that theme going. And I like that, So he's writing to his musician, and it turns out that this musician actually was an alumnus of this high school that he went to. So even though he didn't know him, apparently this guy's a little older, he's got kind of a reason for a personal connection with him. And that was kind of an interesting thing too.
Yeah, I did. I liked that about it, because I don't know, I guess I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like it's kind of a universal thing where when you're young, adolescent, high school, early college, you really identify, with artists who are expressing things that you want to express. And for him, it's like rebelling against the man, rebelling against the mainstream, and he really tags onto that. And I get that too. It was certainly not heavy metal for me. For me, it was more like Tori Amos, Indigo Girls kind of stuff. But I get that, that feeling of kinship with artists, especially at that young age. And you talked about he does get bullied, and there is a montage. I mean, it's literally a montage of him getting bullied by these jocks, and it's funny because today these people would probably be prosecuted.
Oh yeah,
like the world was, and it's so weird because we lived through it. We were there when this stuff was really happening, and fortunately, I never suffered it, but I saw it. This kid, it's just kind of typical bullying. Like he's kind of the heavy metal fan, and he's getting bullied by these jocks or whatever. But there's one scene where he's getting bullied in the locker room, and he's in a towel, and they push him out into the gymnasium where girls are playing volleyball, and they push him out in there, and he's totally nude, and girls are taking pictures of him and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so 80s.
Yeah.
Like seriously, today, like that would be like a crime. Like people would get in big trouble for this. But you youngins who listen to our podcast, we lived that, folks. Like it was a different world, and that type of bullying, was just kind of like, oh, boys will be boys.
Yeah, we were expected to shake it off and walk back home through the snow.
Yeah, exactly. And not that that's a good thing, or
no.
I'm not saying, we were way tougher back in those days. No, that was scarring and damaging back then too. We just didn't pay as much attention, I guess. But yeah, it makes him a really relatable character, and so from the beginning you're on his side, even though I didn't really relate to him with his whole music fascination with this particular genre or whatever. He's still a relatable character because you feel for him. He's just this nice, normal kid who's trying to make his way through high school and adolescence, and he's got a crush on a girl. There's Leslie, this girl that he's got a crush on, and he wants to impress her, and she's there when he's humiliated. But later on, she approaches him and she gives him the Polaroid that was taken of him when he was nude, and it's not like today where it's the internet and it's there forever, like she's like, here's your humiliation, sorry.
We can give it back to you.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, I like that too.
And I wasn't this kid by any stretch. I think probably all of us feel like we were bullied at some point, unless we were the bullies. Almost everybody, whether you really were bullied a lot or whether you were bullied a little, either like you said, you saw some of this happening around you, or it happened to you once or twice. I was definitely, I was bullied a little more in middle school than I was in high school, considerably. But the thing that I kind of related to was in, I think it was 4th or 5th grade, a kid who was this kid, all right, who was this kid fully in like 4th or 5th grade, turned to me just one day, and he was always pretty nice to me. He turned to me one day and he hands me this tape, but he slipped it kind of like under the desk as he was handing it to me, kind of looking left and right in the middle class, like he was, giving me something like drugs or something. And he hands me this tape and he says, "Here, I really think you'll like this." And I looked at it, and it was Alice Cooper, right? And it was Alice Cooper's album, Raise Your Fist and Yell. Of course, it was a tape, and it wasn't the legit tape. It was a tape he copied, so it had, scrawled on it, Alice Cooper. And I took it home, and I listened to it, and I listened to it secretly in my bedroom because I was pretty sure. I mean, my parents never really came out and expressed an opinion one way or the other, but I just knew because I knew Alice Cooper. We all knew of him at this time.
Right.
And, this would not be something that they would want me listening to, and I listened to that thing every night for quite a while after it gave it to me, and I really dug it, and it started a lifelong fanship of mine actually for Alice Cooper. And the funny thing is like I have no idea why this kid thought I would like this. Like I would have given no indication. I barely knew him, but I don't know. He kind of gave me a gift that day, and it just shows what you were saying about how we do, like music can be really powerful, especially to us at this age, and somehow it can touch us, and it really can be an escape. It just serves so many different functions. And for this kid, this guy, he looks up to him. This music is all his life. And so when he's watching television and there's a news report about this guy on TV, he's watching it casually while he's eating cornflakes or something in the morning. And you're seeing he's essentially like an Alice Cooper character. This is the bad boy rocker.
Yeah.
He's got a snake around his neck, which he did. Then he like bites the head off the snake as like dumping the blood all over him, which never ever happened in any rock concert, but people like to think it did, and there were always stories going around about it. It really took me back. And then at the end, this woman mentions that
locally he was the center of a raging controversy just last week when the town council denied him permission to appear at Lake Ridge High's Halloween Party Festival next Saturday. A graduate of Lake Ridge High, it was Kerr's wish to return to his alma mater, a move that was extremely popular with the students. The town council, however, blocked the attempt, citing obscenity and violence in Kerr's music. Again, rock star Sammy Kerr, victim of a hotel fire, dead at age 38.
And this kid just... wow, he's like completely devastated. I mean, he's so devastated. He goes to his room and he starts tearing it up. And again, man, this is just, I mean, it's so honest. I really felt sorry for him.
Absolutely. And I remember that about adolescence and your teen years where you're so connected to these people that you almost feel like they're a part of your life. As an adult, I remember hearing about Michael Jackson dying on the radio.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing about when Prince died, and there are tons of others. Even as an adult, it has an impact on you. You feel like these, they're part of your lives. You don't know them. I saw Prince. Haha. Like, I'll just go ahead and brag.
Wow.
I did see Prince in concert, but I never saw Michael Jackson or any of these people. But you lose them and it impacts you. And mourning is not necessarily the right word, but this is the person that he felt a personal connection to. The one person he felt a personal connection to. He's writing him letters, and it seems like he's been writing him letters for a long time and signing off Ragman. Like, it seems like, I'm sure it's, entirely one-sided, but he felt like this guy was kindred. It really messes him up. And when he sees that TV news report, and I've got to say, like, when they're doing the news report and they have this woman on the news show who's like this conservative lady talking about why he couldn't be there and why they blocked him and whatnot. And her name was Mrs. Sylvia Cavell. But I saw her and I recognized her. I'm like, who is that? And I looked her up on IMDb. Her name's Alice Nunn, and she was Large Marge. Like, really? I couldn't believe that I didn't recognize her immediately. Like, how do you miss Large Marge from Pee-wee's Big Adventure?
Oh my gosh.
It excited me. Sorry, fanboy a little bit.
Well, there are other people in this. I mean, there's Gene Simmons is in this briefly.
Yeah.
He plays the radio DJ who, and honestly, like I knew Gene Simmons was in this. I honestly had to look up which one he played because without his makeup, Gene Simmons is nothing to me, right? But he was
right, and I forgot. Yeah, and I forgot that at one point Gene Simmons was a good-looking guy. Like, I think of it now as being kind of this bloated loudmouth.
That's true. He looks a lot better in this.
Yeah, in this movie he plays Nuke, the radio DJ, who I guess is a friend of Eddie's, the main kid, and they kind of share this little morning moment together. But Nuke reveals that somehow he's gotten his hands on this studio print of Sammy Kerr's last album that hasn't been released yet or wasn't released before his death, and he gives it to Eddie, and that's kind of the impetus for what goes on moving forward.
He said, "I'm going to play this on Halloween night at midnight on the station." But I already made a tape of it, so you can take the record. I know how much he means to you. The girl gives him that Polaroid back and invites him to a pool party.
Which I, even in the moment, like it's not a big deal, but I thought it was kind of funny. Like the DJ gives him this record and he's like, oh, this is his unreleased album. And then Eddie goes home and doesn't listen to it right away.
Yeah.
Like, that bothered me so much.
It doesn't make any sense.
I'll listen to it later.
I'm just
here's my
save
hero.
This for a
I have this
occasion. Said no teenager ever about
Oh
anything.
God, I thought that was so funny. No, yeah. If it had been me and I had gotten, like this recording that nobody else had ever heard before, I would have been at home listening to that thing immediately. But no, he puts it away for a little while and goes to a pool party instead.
And he's odd man out at this pool party. I guess it's being held at the high school pool or something, after hours or so. I don't know. Some indoor pool. And he gets bullied again. Somebody throws a weight on his back and throws him into the pool. And then that same girl, what her name is, Leslie. Rescues him and pulls him out. And he's just pissed because he feels like Leslie just lured him there to be bullied, even though she rescued him.
What, let's all with Eddie because that's real fun, huh? Bunch of assholes! I'm sorry. I'm going to nail every one of those bastards. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I'm going to nail them.
This relationship between the two of them, it doesn't really develop all that. It's not a prominent aspect of the movie. It just kind of, they become partners sort of by the end of it as they're thrown into the moment. And I kind of liked that about this movie too. It was a little different from a lot of the other 80s movies that we review where it's like, girl looks at boy across the room, and instantly there's a connection between them. Or, the opposite. Nerdy guy likes this hot, attractive girl, but she's with the cool guy, and she's basically unreachable. And then either she continues to be unreachable, and it turns out she's not worth it anyway because the more homely-looking girl that ends up looking beautiful once she takes her glasses off is the one he ends up with. Or she does something, like lures the guy into some shady thing, and like Teen Wolf, and it's basically kind of a jerk to him. So it was kind of neat in this case that she didn't really get any of that. She seems to have a genuine interest in him, but it's not really overblown in any particular direction. Which again, I don't know. By this point, I was really into this movie, and I was really kind of going with it. And I didn't feel as cliche as I tend to feel about these kind of movies sometimes.
Yeah. I felt the same way about the relationship between the guy and the girl in a different movie. And if it hadn't been played the way that it was played, I would have felt like it was a little stupid because you didn't really get any reason for why this popular girl was interested in this, fringe guy. But it's like the movie doesn't even really make any kind of big deal about it, so you just go with it. And like the way that she interacts with him, it just feels kind of natural. And he is, he's an average looking guy, but not a bad looking guy. And you could see why a girl would be interested in him. So while in a different movie it could have seemed very forced, it didn't here. And I thought that was good.
Yeah, it was really good. So this is when he goes back and plays his record, which is, was it like Songs in the Key of Death or something like that?
I don't remember.
And as he's playing it, he's kind of slipping into, kind of his state and imagining things. And he starts hearing those voices that you realize pretty quickly are the sounds of, voices being played backwards. As I guess maybe we do need to explain this because our audience could be kind of young. This was another huge controversy at the time, was that groups would deliberately put backward messages into their records.
Yeah, subliminal messaging.
Yeah, the idea would be that you could understand that even though you couldn't understand it consciously, that your brain could somehow hear these backward messages, pick them out, and decode them, and they would have an effect on your subconscious brain. And there was at least one group, I think it was Judas Priest, was actually taken to court over the allegation that a backward message on one of their albums caused somebody to kill somebody or commit suicide or something. And I mean, that's all total BS right now. But these messages were put on albums. They did exist. And for us at the time, especially as kids, there was a certain mystique to them. And so, again, inserting that mystique, this is the first time I've really ever seen a horror movie play with this notion too.
Well, but in real life, when we were young, we heard about these things, and I don't know, I had a record player when I was young, but I guess I wasn't listening to heavy metal, so I wasn't into that. But like, you could spin, with your finger, you could spin the record backwards and hear these backward messages. But even in our day, it wasn't so like completely obvious. Like no. It was actually subliminal. Like in this movie, it's like you can obviously this is a backwards recording. Like that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like
there's a whole section. Yeah,
like right. Like obviously you're supposed to play this backwards, which he does, and that was kind of what was funny to me. Like, he's having problems with these bullies or whatever, and so he plays the record backwards, and I couldn't even tell exactly what it said. Maybe you can help me out, but I feel like it said something like, let the big fish help himself, or let the big fish hang himself, or something like that.
Let the big fish hook himself. You're the bait is you.
He gets from that very short message that he's supposed to somehow allow these bullies to kind of do themselves in. And that's what he does. There's a big montage where he's in the cafeteria, the main kid, and he flips the main bully's tray up onto his shirt or whatever. And the main bully, his name is Tim Haney. And he's played by Doug Savant, who I would never have recognized at all, but he's still a working actor. I knew him. He was one of the main characters on Desperate Housewives, but I would have never recognized him because he's so young in this. And there's this whole montage. It's hilarious, like a hilarious montage where they're running through the high school, the bullies chasing this kid, and they run through the music room and through the library, and like it's really funny. But then the bully somehow, the main guy Eddie, tricks them into thinking that he ran into the teacher's lounge, and they grab a fire extinguisher and shoot the fire extinguisher into the teacher's lounge, think he's in there, but really it's all the teachers in there. And it's funny, on IMDb, the movie is categorized as thriller, horror, comedy. And there are moments like this where it is kind of funny, and there are jokes throughout. If it was really attempting to be a horror comedy, I think it fell a little flat because it really wasn't all that funny. Like I could see the attempts where it was trying to be funny, and it was amusing, but really not necessarily all that funny. But what I did find funny was that once he starts playing this record backwards, it gives him that initial message first, but then he keeps playing it backwards and it keeps giving him new messages. And not only does it give him new messages, but he's able to talk to it like directly. Like it's basically like he's working a Ouija board.
Yeah, exactly.
Really.
Exactly. And I thought that was so cool. Like, I've never seen that concept before. Really creepy, I thought, actually. You know, because I mean, you got this mystical record, but you can control it. But what's it capable of? You know, it's sending you messages. What's going on here? Again, very much like a Ouija board. And again, I could only make out a little bits of what it was saying, which again I thought was a good choice. I'm telling you, I'm so into the movie at this point. And it sends him to the machine shop. I think it just tells him to go to the machine shop basically at the school.
Yeah.
And when he goes there, sure enough, like, the bullies are there. They have kind of a battle, kind of a fight. And it looks like Tim has him cornered. And something happens electrically. I don't know if Tim slipped or something like that, or if it was supposed to be something mysterious and mystical, but he falls down onto one of the machines. His tie gets caught in one of the spinning, I guess it's like a lathe or something, and yanks his head down onto this machine. At the same time, the end of the lathe starts coming towards him, the part with the spike on it that kind of spears or holds the item in place, and it's coming right towards his eye, and everyone's just watching this happen, including Eddie. And you're kind of wondering if Eddie's just going to let this happen, and we're about to see the first kill of the movie. But then Eddie, totally in character, reaches up next to at the power switch and completely cuts the power off just in time, which is enough to scare these bullies, and they run out. So he's won his kind of his first victory over these folks at this point. And you know what I liked about this whole Ouija board album thing, and I guess maybe I'm just reading this film like literature, but again, you know, he's forming a companionship with this album, which is something that in a way we do. You know, an album becomes kind of a friend that we turn to sometimes when we're feeling a certain way or we want to get a certain mood. And in kind of a very literal way, this guy is, you know, forming a companionship with this album. Is this too much?
No, it's just taking me back to my oh God, I hope my mom's not listening, but like it takes me back to my college days when you would put on a particular album when you're ready for sexy time.
That's right. Well, you don't still do that? I don't want to know.
Yeah, no, like, yeah. Let's move on.
You brought it up, man, not me.
But yeah, I did like that, and I liked the whole concept of him spinning it back, rolling the record player the wrong way, and communicating in that way. It got a little cheesy for me then when he started recording the album to cassette, and then he could just listen to the cassette and the cassette could talk to him. Like, I understand why they did that, because they needed it to be portable. You know, like they needed him to be able to communicate with this ghost rocker wherever he might be, or needed the ghost rocker to be able to do stuff in other places. But the idea of him, I'll just record it on cassette and then he can talk to me wherever I go, like, a little cheesy.
It loses the whole mystique of the record being played backwards, because we know a tape just doesn't work that way.
He makes a copy of the cassette and he gives it to the bully, and it's like a peace offering. Like, he tapes it to the bully's locker and it's like, oh, here's a peace offering, listen to my cassette or whatever. And the bully just takes the cassette. That really leads to what I think is probably my favorite scene from the movie, just because it is so 80s and so cheesy. You see the bully, Tim, whatever his name is, in the car with a girl who we've seen before, who's also been mean to our protagonist. And like, they're making out and getting hot and heavy or whatever. And then the bully's like, oh, I gotta pee or whatever. So he gets out and goes, he's like peeing outside the car. But the girl is bored in the car. So she puts on headphones with this little, you know, tape deck, and she starts listening to that tape, and it's oh my gosh, it's so funny. like this ghostly mist comes out of the earphones. These old earphones that we used to wear in the 80s, and like starts like molesting her. And it's like this animated green smoke that like it's kind of in the form of hands, and like you can see the hands like caressing her boobies. And then she starts to take off she takes off her shirt, and like boobs finally in this 80s movie. Here we get some boobs, and then like you see the ghostly mist like going down into her panties as she's like taking off her romper. But it's like she's hypnotized and she doesn't even know what's going on. Oh my god. And it was so funny, like she's totally getting off, like she is like getting off hardcore, and she opens her eyes and there's like this giant weird demon. And it's so funny because what was hilarious to me was like the mist had been like messing around in her downstairs area, and then she opens her eyes and it's this giant demon, and it has this enormous giant tongue. Oh man, it's so funny.
Yeah.
And then that's it. You see like 1 second of this giant demon, and then she screams, and Tim the bully runs back, and the car is all filled with smoke, and I thought she was dead, but it turns out she's not dead, but like her ears are all melted off where the headphones were and stuff. And oh god, it just talking about it now, it's so much more fun to talk about it than it was to watch it, because then we get Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah. Well, the movie keeps putting in these like it's like they have to constantly remind you of the danger of heavy metal music and the controversies that were existing at the day. Like, hey, this is what the movie's about, remember? So we're constantly seeing these TV clips at convenient times, and there's a clip playing on TV, and it's in somebody's house or something, and I don't know. And it's this woman speaking with Ozzy Osbourne, and Ozzy Osbourne is playing a preacher in this.
Those rockers really have a strange sense of humor, don't they?
I don't even think it's a sense of humour. I think they're just out-and-out sick people. I mean, and they're trying to make everyone else around them who listens to their music as sick as they are.
It's kind of funny to see Ozzy Osbourne, who is much more lucid in this show. I mean, he was way more lucid back then than he is now. I think there were times in which the promotion for this movie really played up Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne having roles in it, but really they just have these tiny little cameos. If you don't know who they are, you wouldn't know they were there.
It would just fly by you. But he's playing this preacher, and he's talking about the dangers of heavy metal music, and he recites these lyrics.
I'll give you an example. I have one of the lyrics. You will tell me what you honestly think is.
Go right ahead.
Gonna drive my long steel missile down on your love channel. Deep, deep, you'll beg for more. Raising hell and serpent score. Feel me, feel me. Now, what does that mean to you? To me, it means nothing but a sexual act.
You and I and anybody our age knows that there was a time when heavy metal music in particular really was under scrutiny, and they were saying that it caused people to do terrible things. And I think it was, I can't think of his name, but the lead singer of Twisted Sister, do you remember his name?
Dee Snider.
Yeah, Dee Snider had to testify, I think, to Congress. Yeah. And it was really funny to watch when we were growing up, because here's Dee Snider, Twisted Sister, who was, this crazy rocker, but he got in front of Congress and he was so eloquent in defending art and music. And I just remember as a kid thinking that was so cool. Here's this guy who wears makeup and has, this perm hairstyle, and he's wearing these hot pants and whatever in his videos, and then he gets in front of Congress and he's totally eloquent in defending art, and that just made heavy metal and music in general just so much cooler to me. These aren't ignorant people, these aren't stupid people, they're artists, and they're doing what they do. so, I appreciated that about this movie too.
Yeah, that's Marilyn Manson, same thing, right after when he kind of got blamed a little bit for the Columbine shootings, much later. Same deal. He probably had the smartest things to say about everybody's reaction, about the causes for that, that anybody did. And but you kind of learn as you get older that the musicians were actually the dorks in high school. I mean, they were not, they were the non-jocks. They were the guys who probably felt like outcasts, who had nothing better to do with their time, weren't getting girls, so they were at home with their guitars practicing 24/7,
right.
And that's how they got good. And then they turn into these, larger-than-life idols, but they usually have backgrounds of complete dorkiness, and they were the intellectuals, perhaps, who had a lot of time for introspection because they were not getting the girls back in those days. Yeah, and they even have a scene in here of this musician on the TV screen, Sammy Kerr, testifying in front of Congress, right? Or again, he's also saying, what the movie probably wants to say. Not much, but just, well, this is free speech. And,
right.
Blah blah.
Like it's not like this movie is pushing some big message or anything, but
no.
Right. But those of us who lived through it, we get those references. But it's funny, so I guess after this girl gets hurt and the bully comes to the kid's house and calls him out, and you can tell that, now this kid somehow, I guess, is kind of imbued with these supernatural powers, I guess.
Yeah.
Like they don't touch on this very much. Like the bully comes over and confronts Eddie, and Eddie can make, I don't know, the fire in the jack-o'-lanterns, one of the only Halloween references, the fire in the jack-o'-lanterns can flare up when Eddie's upset or whatever. But when Eddie finds out that this girl has been hurt, another scene that I thought was so funny was he has this really sincere breakup with the cassette.
I think we should end it. I don't want to do anymore. No whims. No false metal. No, that's it. It's over now.
We can't do this anymore. I'm done. Wait, I'm sorry. But then, all of the equipment starts to freak out, and there's all these really cool 80s electrical effects. And the dead rocker, Sammy Kerr, actually appears in his bedroom, and it's basically, it's like any kind of possessed object kind of movie where you did my bidding for a while, but now I'm in control, and now you have to do this, and then the last part of the movie ends up with Eddie kind of trying to stop what he has already set into motion.
Yeah, he makes the rocker go away by killing his own stereo.
Right.
He just bashes it with a bat. And this is where the movie started to get a little muddled for me because all right, we kind of know what's going on, we kind of know what we're up against, but now it's becoming a little unclear. All right, so like you said earlier, it seemed to be hinting that Eddie was getting some powers. I was getting kind of a 976 evil vibe from it, maybe he was, going to be transformed and consumed by him or possessed by him or something, but that never really happens. And this rocker, again, materializes, but then he goes away. I thought, okay, we're bringing this guy into the world. Now he's manifested. It's kind of like Freddy Krueger kind of thing. He's going to run around and start taking care of things. But that doesn't really happen so much either. He still seems very much connected to this record or the stereo. And so when Eddie, smashes a stereo and stuff like that, it seems like the problem is solved. But he realizes, that as much as he breaks this record, he's got a tape out there still. And so, he calls up Roger, his friend, who we've neglected to mention, but he's his even dorkier friend, and tells Roger that he needs to go and get this tape. And Roger's like, what is this all about? It's kind of ridiculous. What's the big deal? He's like, just go and get this tape. And I'm like, what? Why is he sending Roger? What's going on? And so Roger breaks into Tim's car in Tim's driveway in the middle of the day with a coat hanger
in like
with
like a ski mask.
Yeah.
Like, he's not literally wearing a ski mask, but it's like he dressed up like what a thug should look like to break into a car. Like if you're gonna break into a car, like
do it at night at least.
Don't dress up, right?
When those things are actually effective.
And again, it's trying to go for the humor because he doesn't even have to break in. Like he's trying to fidget with the lock with like a coat hanger or something, and then he realizes that the car isn't even locked.
Yeah.
He just gets in there and takes the tape.
And the tape is still there.
The tape is
this horrible tape that Tim knows is bad because it's melted his girlfriend's ears off. It's just casually in the front seat in a Walkman.
It's silly. I don't know. You know, as silly as it is, it didn't bother me. It wasn't so stupid that I was rolling my eyes. It was just kind of like, I get what they're going for. They're going for the comedy here. It's not really all that funny, but I get it. You know, like it's fine. Roger gets the tape, and Roger. It's so funny that you said we've neglected to mention him. It's because he's totally unimportant. Like as I was watching it and I was taking my notes, there were all of these scenes where Eddie was talking to his dorky friend, and I just was like, we don't need to talk about this because it's totally inconsequential. But I looked on IMDb, and the guy who plays Roger, gosh, I don't even know what his name is. This was his only acting credit, but then he went on, this guy, to be like a writer and producer for the X-Files, and like he's got an amazing resume, this dorky friend who breaks into the car. But he gets the tape, and Eddie told him to destroy it, but he doesn't, and instead he plays it. And then the dead rocker appears to him and tells him, "You've got to play my tape at the Halloween dance or I'll kill you." And so Roger, the dork, takes the tape to the Halloween dance and eventually plays it, I guess. And go ahead.
There's this fantastic special effect. I thought it was really good, and especially for the 80s. Like I'm not even sure how they did it, but when the rocker appears to him and says this to him, I think the screen comes on behind him, the TV, and there's that woman again speaking about the evils of rock, and he reaches his arm in to the screen and pulls her out by the neck, and as he pulls her out, she becomes this like charred little body. It looks like a charred baby or something that he drops on the floor. And then there's like another scene where Eddie calls Roger and says, "You destroyed the tape, right?" And Roger's like, yeah, sure. So then Eddie moves on to his next thing. And in the meantime, there's another shot of Roger at home vacuuming up the charred corpse.
It was hilarious.
It was really funny.
Hilarious.
That worked for me. That was hilarious.
Oh God, yeah, I thought that was so funny. And then so Leslie calls Eddie from the dance, I guess, to see where he is, and he's at home because he's grounded or whatever, but he hears in the background this music playing. So he jumps in his car, and then the evil rocker possesses his car. It's really kind of a cool concept. I just didn't feel like it was really executed that well. Like it was the concept that because the rocker, you know, is a musician, anything that could transmit music or radio waves, he's able to kind of
possess. Yeah.
And so he possesses Eddie's car, and there's this whole car. Yeah, it's not even a chase because nobody's chasing him, but the car is driving around, and it seems like it's intentionally trying to kill Eddie, and it goes, through, it goes under things, so the whole top of the car gets sliced off, and Eddie is only able to stop it right before it goes off this drawbridge. And God, I don't know, like the whole last act of the movie was so madcap that, I mean, I get what they were trying to do, but the movie is like an hour and 45 minutes long. And at this point, there was still like 40 minutes left. And I was like, what are we going to do for 40 minutes?
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of Eddie, who eventually hooks up with Leslie at the dance. It's just a lot of them kind of running around, and this ghost rocker kind of chasing them around through electronics. And it's not bad. I just feel like it just went on for a really long time.
Yeah, that was the part of which I just I got really bored, honestly. Like, I mean, bored is the way you can be bored of a movie where there's a lot of action going on, you're just kind of tired of it, and you don't really. It's just so much happening, and nothing's really moving forward. They're just running from one place to the next. And this guy can materialize at all these speakers. And at one point, you're just like, get out of the room and get away from all these speakers.
Right.
And it loses its consistency. Like, well, why is he able to materialize through these speakers and not these? I mean, they're not playing the tape anymore. It seemed to be connected to the tape and the music at first and the stereo that was playing it, but now it seems like almost any speaker he can come through now. And he materializes and he's able to do stuff, but then they're able to like cut the power or something occasionally, which sucks him back in temporarily. So then there's like powers kind of connected to it. It's kind of the electrical transmission aspect of it, I suppose. It's all real muddled.
And it's hard to talk about in sequence because the sequence doesn't really matter. Like there's a cool scene where at the Halloween dance, the principal or some teacher or something introduces the band that's supposed to play, but then all of the equipment starts to get like electrified and like Sammy Kerr, the dead rocker, like appears like out of the speaker or something, and like there's a whole musical like he plays a whole song. Yeah, there's a whole number and he plays a whole song and like everybody's totally into it. And the guy that plays the rocker, his name is Tony Fields. And I don't know much about I totally recognized him, but I'm not even sure from what. He was in A Chorus Line, the movie of A Chorus Line, and he was also one of the zombies in Thriller, the video. So this guy's a dancer. He was, and you can tell he's a dancer. Like when he's performing, like he's doing all these crazy spins. Like he seems much more like a dancer. That the 80s rockers were all about flair and show, and that's great. But I mean, this guy's like pirouetting and like throwing his hair back, and and then like so he's performing, for this Halloween dance, and then he starts vaporizing people with the electrical bolts from his guitar.
That's right. And at first they don't seem to care. Like everybody's kind of shocked, but then they all move back up to the front of the stage so the next guy can get zapped. And the special effects were actually pretty good. I was not expecting a movie like this to have these kind of special effects. I have to hand it to them.
Not bad.
No, I've seen so much worse in these movies.
Right.
Yeah.
But the whole, it was very 80s, the whole electric currency and electric bolts and stuff, like very 80s,
Animated.
Not something that you would probably see today, but for the time, certainly not bad. And then it just goes into what literally is like probably a 20-30 minute chase scene of this rocker just kind of randomly chasing them throughout town. Eddie and Leslie, is that her name? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like he chases them all over town and he vaporizes a cop, and then they end up back at Eddie's house, and like they get cornered in Eddie's bathroom, and like then there's this whole thing where like somehow Sammy Kerr, the rocker's hand gets in the toilet. And like it's like agonizing pain for him. Like I guess we were supposed to understand that water hurts him for some reason.
Maybe because of electricity. That was the only thing I was thinking of.
Like, he gets his hand in the toilet and he's like, ah, like he's freaking out. And then like Leslie like flushes the toilet and he like almost kind of like his hand gets sucked back in and he's still like freaking out. Oh gosh. It was at that point where I hate to use the term because it's so overused, but like jumping the shark, like seriously, like the toilet.
The toilet. I love the toilet physics in movies too, where like like toilets have these like this enormous suction power. You get your hand in there, somebody flushes it, and you're in danger of losing an arm.
Oh man. And all this time I'm thinking, okay, so Eddie has destroyed the original record. He's destroyed the tapes that they've used. But I remembered from the very beginning that Gene Simmons said, I'm going to play his record at midnight on Halloween. And finally, Eddie remembers that. And so he tries to call the radio station, but he can't get a hold of the guy. And so he and Leslie start running towards the radio station. But we're hearing on the radio station, oh, God. And we've missed so many things. Like when Eddie first explains to Leslie what's going on.
I want to know the whole story. All right, okay, fine. Look, I've heard of raising spirits from the dead by incantations, right?
That's right.
She was like, yeah, I guess. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a thing you do. And then when they finally, he tries to get a hold of the radio and he can't, but then we hear the radio broadcast.
We have got a treat for you. A world premiere. The only Sammy Kerr album never released. So here we go. In the true spirit of Halloween, the Eve of the Dead. We're going to play this first cut backwards.
What? Why would you do that? Like, oh, you've never heard this before. It's a brand new release, but we're going to play the first track backwards.
It's so stupid. Okay. Plus, I mean, if you really want to nitpick, all right, so that means that somebody else has played this backwards before, because we find out that the DJ's not even in the booth. He's recorded his whole show for the night, and it's playing on his reel-to-reel. So he had to play it backwards. But does that mean that when he taped it first, before he handed the record to him, he taped the first track backwards? Because if you've got a tape...
Yeah, you can't play the tape backwards.
It doesn't make sense logically. It doesn't make sense technically.
Right.
Yep.
And then chase. They end up at the radio station, and Eddie tells Leslie, like, you stand out here and I'm going to go do something else. And if I'm not back in 100 seconds, then run in and destroy the tape or something. And Eddie takes this little, like, I don't know, this 80s cassette player and throws it in the back of the cop car that they've stolen. And Eddie, like, is driving the cop car, like, trying to taunt this tape recorder. and he's like, oh, I guess Rock's chosen warrior is nothing but a effing wimp poser. And that finally taunts Sammy the Rockers. Like, it taunts him out, and he comes out, and he's in the back of the car. And then Eddie drives the car off of, I guess, the drawbridge that we saw before that he almost went into. But, like, he drives, it's at least a 1 or 2 story drop into this river.
Yeah.
And I guess because it's water, it kills the evil rocker. But Eddie's okay. Like, he surfaces like, oh, thank goodness he's fine.
He just kind of yells out.
Yeah, and then we see Leslie, who has already broken the tape in the radio station, and she's just like standing there waiting. And Eddie shows up. I guess he walked back from the miles away that he'd driven. And they make out, and the end.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was ready for that by this point. It was just like, get me to the final curtain. I know they're going to kiss. Just let them kiss and let's be done. You know, did you play it through all the way? I don't know why, but I just felt like there was going to be a scene at the end of the credits, even though it was not at all common at this time for there to be something like that. And sure enough, there was. There was a really brief clip of Ozzy Osbourne. The movie, you know, like I said, it was. It really had me going there for a while. Really cool concept, really relatable character, very different, I thought. And again, I really haven't seen anything quite like this, where, you know, we've seen like possessed item things, but to kind of make music itself and the album itself and the the guy behind the music. It kind of wraps it all up into one and throws it at this fanboy. I was really behind it until it just devolved into insanity at the end. And it was pretty weak. I was really disappointed.
It got pretty stupid at the end. But if you are nostalgic for the 80s, watch this movie. I mean, sure. I mean, watch it. I mean, it's fun. It's totally a throwback to the 80s and imperfect in every way. But I didn't not enjoy it. Like it was what it was. It was what it was.
It wasn't a waste of time.
I appreciate it. No, not a waste of time. If you're our age, I feel like this is a movie for us. I feel like if some of our listeners, like I'm thinking specifically of Jordan, who has podcasted with us before, she would probably laugh her ass off at this movie and think it was so stupid. And in many ways it is. But if you grew up in the 80s, it's definitely a throwback to that time, and I appreciated that at least.
Oh, and it's kind of remarkable how this little unknown movie, you could play, the 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon with it because of the people involved.
Yeah.
Even the director, the director went on to direct like Air Bud.
Mm-hmm.
And some movies like that.
A Dolphin's Tale.
Yeah. And Glenn Morgan, who you were talking about, who played Roger, he wrote Final Destination 3, a ton of X-Files episodes, even 21 Jump Street. I mean, pretty impressive resume for these folks. It's funny. Of course, it's telling that the things that they ended up doing were not the things they did for this movie.
Yeah. Oh, and I just totally messed up. The guy that you were talking about didn't direct A Dolphin's Tale. That was the director of this movie, Charles Martin Smith. And he was also an actor. He was in American Graffiti, and he was in The Untouchables. Very recognizable face. And he directed the first episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is like my favorite television show ever. Wow. So yeah, lots of connections. If you're interested in looking into those things, I understand why it's not more esteemed, and I understand why people probably have never heard of it, because it's not a great movie. Well, it's really not. But it's fun for what it is.
Honestly, for whatever reason, I don't know if any of these heavy metal horror movies were ever very good. Or can you think of a single one of them that is notorious now that people look back on fondly?
No.
It blows my mind.
You and I watch these movies from the 80s all the time, and we trash them when we review them, but I enjoy going back to them. It's fun to go back to this type of movie, and you don't see this type of stuff very much anymore. It's all superheroes and sequels and prequels, and everything's so gritty and raw, and this is just. It's a fun throwback to a different time when horror took itself a little less seriously, I think, and people were more willing to kind of, try things outside of the box. And I appreciate that. So I appreciate this movie for that reason. It's not a great movie, but it was fun. It was fun to watch. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again. Probably not, but I enjoyed it just for the nostalgia.
Yeah, and it's well made. It really is a well made movie. I mean, it's shot well. Like I said, the special effects for their time are pretty good. The acting's solid. Yeah, you really can't fault it. It's just
right.
It's just one of those movies. So yeah, no, for I completely agree with you. Entertaining, except for like the last 20 minutes.
Right.
Oh, well, thank you again for listening to another episode. If you enjoyed this, please share it with a friend. You can find us on iTunes, right next to all of your favorite heavy metal tunes. Look for us also on Google Play and Stitcher, and find us on Facebook, where you can like our page, share it with a friend, and also comment on what you thought of this episode, as well as anything you would like us to review in the future. Thank you again, Nick, very much for this suggestion. Until next time, I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
With two guys and a chainsaw.